Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here on stage with you, Shachar, once again. Founder of Curve. Those of you who live in the UK, of course, know what Shachar does. I'm Stefan. I'm with Speedinvest. I'm the FinTech guy at Speedinvest. We're a pan-European seed fund and do a lot of FinTech. So let's dive straight in. Shachar, can you please just remind us, I mean, you started a few years back, but really launched in a big way in 2018, so not so long ago. Give us a quick update on where you stand.
Yeah, so just to make sure everyone, just raise of hands, who here heard about Curve? Just curious to know. Oh, wow, customers, that's nice. Thank you.
Okay.
So Curve, we're building a new category, and we call it an over-the-top banking platform. Basically, from a customer perspective, the positioning is all your cards in one, and it gives the customer an experience of a challenger bank, so real-time notification, lock your card, no FX when you go abroad, and more features. The time travel feature, but without changing your underlying bank. And the paradigm we believe will be the winning paradigm is that our entire money will eventually connect together into one interface that will allow us to access and save money on fees. The difference in our approach is that we're not here to compete with the banks. We actually think your bank is doing a great job keeping your money safe. And with that in mind, we launched out of beta in February 2018. And since then, we reached to over 700,000 customers. And we're going to hit 1 million customers by the end of the year, most of which is from word of mouth and referrals. So it's a very sticky and viral product. That's more or less.
Great. So obviously, since you started, you know, the world has evolved in financial services. There's a lot of competition from challenger banks, especially in the UK, but also elsewhere. There's PSD2, which makes it a lot easier to aggregate accounts. So how do you deal with that? What's your response?
Yeah.
What do you do to win in that game?
Yeah, so the world of banking, so every market operates in a bundle. So our banks were the old bundle where they control the entire value chain from publishing to distribution. And what happens when new technology emerges, like in banking now, and new regulations in our case as well, then the world of banking starts to unbundle itself. And the challenger banks, so the entirety of what happens in banking, and challenger banks are one of them, is actually a good example of the unbundling that's happening. There's very low barrier of entry for challenger banks. Everyone can become a challenger within 3-4 months with different partners like Wirecard, one of the sponsors here. And that actually is good for Curve because what it does, it increases fragmentation. Thanks to the likes of Tandem and Starling, who try to compete with each other and win customers, you have more cards in your pocket, more fragmentation, and what Curve does is just brings it all together. So from our perspective, bring 10 more Starlings, more fragmentation, more convergence that Curve can do. So we don't see them as competitors, and in fact, this fragmentation that is happening by PSD2 regulations in Europe and also new regulation in the US and all those new entrants, it's good for us because the more fragmentation, the bigger the problem it is, the more convergence and solutions we can bring.
So you obviously launched in the UK. You're now being used all across Europe. What next steps in terms of internationalization do you have? What about the US, for instance?
Yeah, so there's 2 activities we're doing constantly, which is expansion. So we're now available, as you said, 31 countries in Europe and the UK. And we have started to work towards the US. We just recruited the first employee there, and we're looking to launch there sometime next year, still not final. And it's, of course, a big market for us, especially with the positioning of all the cards in one, where most Americans on average have about 8 cards. And World Bank data shows that between New York and San Francisco, they have 14 different cards, credit cards and debit cards accounts and business accounts. But we also do a lot of expansion on the product, enhancement of the product. So introducing different products and services that allows our customers to rebundle more of their finances. So although we're not competing with the challenger banks, we see many of those challenger banks as features. And a good example is looking at the data. A lot of our customers have a challenger bank behind Curve, so they're adding Revolut card for FX. But because Curve provides you a better, more seamless experience on FX, just make all your cards 0FX. They stopped using Revolut for the FX proposition. So by introducing all those different jobs people need to do with money, send money abroad without any FX fees, spend money abroad without FX fees, send money to friends, see all your cards, including loyalty cards in Curve, share my underlying cards with someone else, split transaction into installments, slowly start eating of those different features that people call companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, in the US, there's been multiple, I mean, you're right, there's obviously, the average consumer compared to the European one has a lot more relationships and with different financial service providers. So, you know, I guess Curve is a really good solution for the US market. However, there's been multiple attempts in the past, right? I don't know if any one of you remember there's been multiple sort of aggregation plays in the US market that actually didn't work. So why are you going to be successful, you think?
Yeah. So you refer probably to Coin and
Coin,
Stratos,
yeah.
Plastic.
Yeah.
Just a question I'm curious to know. Who of you heard about Coin and Plastic and Stratos? Just raise your hands. Okay, not so many. So indeed, in the US, there's, since 2012, many companies are trying to consolidate all your cards into one. And the way they've done it is that they've copied your max stripe information, your track one information from the card, into a more dynamic card max stripe. So basically, every time you change the card on the Coin card, it would change the information that is on the card. So it would be as if you swipe different cards. That's how it worked. But it's a very different product in Curve from everything we do. I think a good comparison of Coin to Curve would be a comparison between an antibiotic to a handkerchief. When you're sick, you get your running nose. But the running nose is not the source of the problem. It's merely the side effect. The fact that you have multiple cards in your wallet, it is not the problem. The bulky wallet is not the problem we're trying to solve. It's merely the side effect. The source of the problem when you're sick is some sort of microbe or bacteria you have in your body. And an antibiotic will also solve the side effect. Probably is better than the handkerchief. And Coin has solved the fragmentation in your wallet, the bulky wallet problem. Not even that. They couldn't solve it because it never worked. But we're solving the problem, the source of fragmentation, by using the MasterCard rails and moving your bank into the cloud. Nothing is a hardware play here like Coin did. But the positioning is a very strong positioning. It's very simplistic positioning, all your cards in one.
Yeah, my wife is a doctor. She would probably recommend us to simply stay in bed for a few days and not take any antibiotics.
Yeah.
But so one thing I'm curious about, I mean, if you look at the challenger banks, it's interesting. Most of them run on a commission model and not so much really using balance sheet for those that actually have a bank license. And I'm just wondering why that is so, because the old model used to be, you know, giving out free accounts and then monetizing on lending. That paradigm seems to shift somewhat, but how do you feel about lending in the context of challenger banks and Curve?
So there's a lot of money to be made on lending, but it is not an easy business to do. You see a lot of lenders, the likes of Lending Club, really getting the valuation down to 1.5, 2x of their revenue multiple. And actually, if you look at the market, banks are doing a good job in lending, and not only banks, also credit providers. The challenge we have in lending, or the opportunity I believe that exists in lending, is less around the way banks or companies lend in terms of the stack behind it or the rates. It is more about the experience. Today, what's available to us as customers is I can go to a bank and ask to refinance my loan, which will take me a long time. I can go and take off-the-shelf credit card, which has a certain APR, which I may or may not be eligible for. I can use Klarna online in a merchant that supports Klarna and split into installments, which is a newer experience, but it's only for online and only for retailers. Where we believe the market is going is that new credit models is being introduced by having more access to data, and new experiences are being introduced as well by controlling the user interface. And something that Curve is building right now is, and we're testing it with some users, is allowing a user to split any transaction they've made in the past into installments. Doesn't matter which customer, which merchant you shopped anywhere in the world. I can go to any store globally, pay something at this table for $1,000, open my Curve app, swipe split to 10 installments, and instead of paying $1,000 a month, with my credit card, I will pay $102 every month with whatever account I have, just one split. And this is where the opportunity lies. And of course, the more data you have, the more, the better decisions you can make on behalf of the business and the customer.
Yeah, I'm afraid we're out of time. I mean, you recently did a nice round. So when can we expect you to announce the next big one?
Probably sooner than we think.
Okay. Thanks, Shachar.
Thank you.